Oh, his builder's dead here. Is that how you know?
I'm reading the news wire at the bottom of this
Oh
bullet
yes.
window.
Oh yes. We need a Chiron is what we need in our game.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
We returned.
Episode 69 finally over.
Yeah, we've just been in episode 69 for the last 2 weeks, and now we can finally go to 70.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're ready for
Yeah.
it at last.
The game is no longer nice. Now it's time to get serious.
Did you do anything interesting in the 2 weeks off?
I mean, I've been on that. I've been doing that volunteer work with USDR, which was a lot of work. I'm glad we took 2 weeks off because I really needed that time.
Was it like longer than normal workday most of the days?
I was going pretty hard on it just because it was like,
Yeah.
I don't. It's a limited window, so I was like, I'm gonna get it done, or else.
You got to take advantage of your time. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I was like trying to make sure that my day job projects weren't falling apart at night. So it's good. I would have been a real grump to pair program with.
So you were checking back in on your day job as well, even though technically you're off.
I was off, but my manager asked. He made like a nice ask to be like, can you just like peek over and make sure the project you're running doesn't fall over? And I was like, yeah, I can.
Yeah.
I'll keep my thing like on track and like make sure the tasks are good and like look at what
Tom, you're keeping the world together.
I'm at least keeping two small chunks of something together.
Yeah. What about fun stuff though?
Fun stuff.
Anything fun? Yeah.
I am deep into the Yakuza Zero, which has been a really good sort of turn off the brain and
Yeah.
go fishing and play mahjong experience.
Do you play mahjong in that game?
I tried mahjong and I tried shogi, and I don't get it. I need like a real guide.
What mahjong do they have? Do they have the sort of like mahjong games that were popular in the late 80s where it's just like the stack of mahjong tiles, or is it actual mahjong?
I think there's a variety of it, which is the worst part because like I didn't even know how to play one.
Well, real mahjong or like mahjong specifically, not just like alternate games with the tiles. It's 4 players and it resembles gin rummy, where you have to like find particular combinations of cards.
Yeah.
Or tiles rather. Is that the version that you were playing?
Yeah, there's one of those in there for sure.
And there's like a full like Wikipedia implementation in
oh my god
Yakuza Zero to explain the rules for all
the
these
tutorials.
games.
They're just like, all right, here's your tutorial. Get ready for like 9 pages of tutorial explanation.
Yeah.
It's nice you can go back to it, but like, oh man.
Judgment has blackjack and I think Hold'em poker as well.
Yeah, blackjack, poker, baccarat. Baccarat's in this one too.
Oh, there's baccarat?
Yeah.
No.
Which I haven't
really get your James Bond out.
I haven't. I mean, like, I guess since you're the one-eyed Goro Majima really looks like he should be playing some baccarat. So I'm like, with it.
And so, how deep into the storyline have you gotten in Yakuza Zero?
I've got the real estate business going, and I just went to the cabaret club that I think I'm going to buy or like start running.
Yeah.
It's truly weird. I've done some very strange side stories. I love it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I could get into the landlord simulator, just get that inner rent seeker out of me. The cabaret club was, I think, a little bit too far for me. I couldn't quite get into it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've heard people say how much they really love that minigame in particular, and I haven't even started it yet.
Oh, yeah, I guess it's more involved. You do have to like train up. It's a little bit more RPG-ish. You have to like train up your hostesses.
Oh God, is it just Pokemon but with cabaret?
It's Pokemon, but with exploited women.
That's really yeah. It's it's sure. I was actually reading a lot of articles about this over the weekend, and my partner sent me one that was like, they won't let Kiryu be in a fighting game because the creators of Yakuza will not let him hit women. And I was like, this is very chivalrous, but also like, Kiryu's not an equal opportunity pummeler.
Yeah, it's true. And there are human beings. Like they don't have many villainous women in these games.
Oh, I think explicitly none. And like and like when you find the quotes from them, they're like, oh yeah, this is a game for men about men. And I was like, well, at least they know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's true. It's a lot about brotherhood and a lot about loyalty and betrayal and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and like all the villains are sort of explicitly meant to be like toxic masculinity, and Kiryu and Goro and I guess future protagonists are all supposed to like sort of be the antidote to that.
Right.
It's cool.
So I went back to Yakuza Zero, inspired by you, the
Oh.
last couple days. So I finally cleared it out. I was like 75% of the way done with the game, and then
Oh, you hadn't finished it. Oh,
I hadn't
shit.
finished it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was so I did like 4 hours of button mashing yesterday night, in fact.
Nice.
And I did so much button mashing that I missed our family Chinese New Year Zoom. I was just like had my phone across the room, and today being the holiday, was it a holiday for you as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Today being the holiday, yeah. Shout out to people who didn't get President's Day off, by the way.
I mean, no presidents, no masters, but also I'll take a day off work.
Yeah. I took the day off. So I thought Sunday was Saturday. I just had that. I just had like the framing in my mind that like it felt like a Saturday.
Yep, that makes sense. Oh, shit,
So I
dude.
like forgot about that was gonna happen. I was just playing Yakuza Zero. Then like I'm watching the end credits scroll by. I pick up my phone and I have like a text from my mom and a text from my sister. They're like, we're doing the Zoom right now. It wasn't like, are you okay? Or like, did you make it back home all right? It was just like, hey, we're doing the Zoom.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well,
Which is fine. We don't need Chinese New Year to make an excuse to do these kinds of things. We should just do it more often.
yeah, and like, right, having family Zoom on a specific holiday is like, I've enjoyed the random ones during the pandemic more than like the Christmas and the Thanksgiving ones, because like,
Yeah.
doing it on a day where you're normally together is like extra shit.
Yeah. My my brother-in-law, brother, and nephew all live together right now. That sounds more complicated than it needs to sound. Basically, my brother came down from Seattle to basically stay with my sister because my mom is living down there as well. He just figured being around family was good.
Yeah.
They all have birthdays like right around the same time. So they're doing like this omnibus birthday party over the weekend. That's all going to happen over Discord because they're going to be like doing it in Minecraft, and they have all these like activities planned in Minecraft. It's going to be a friggin' blowout. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, that's a fun idea.
Yeah.
I like that. Are you familiar? Have you seen Gathertown?
Gathertown? I have not.
I think it's gather.town. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I think I've seen this.
Yeah, because it's like it's a video.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Totally.
really nice. But a friend of mine threw a birthday party in there, and like built like a game room where people could get together and like play. Like they had like a chessboard and a what's the word? Codenames game that was inside Gathertown, and like you could walk up to it and play, or like go to the bar and chat with the group there. It was a very clever.
Oh yeah. They got this kind of Mario Paint kind of thing going on.
Yeah, and like a bunch of game stuff. Like it's like you can play like a board game together or something.
Yeah. Either the people that do this are friends of friends because I've been in one of these before, or the idea for this kind of thing has just like permeated the collective consciousness, and like 5 different teams are implementing the same type of thing.
I think this is like the one, and it seems like they've definitely capitalized on the pandemic, but also it took them a year to sort of get to a thing people could really use and are into. So.
And it's got like proximity based audio, right? So like if your little avatar is not close to the other person's avatar, you can't really hear what's going on. So you can almost have a quasi like
exactly
bring your drink over, say hi to somebody, and then try to politely extricate yourself. It's like, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom. Right? Like what is your technique in like kind of like those types of parties?
That's a great question. Yeah, if it's
text message, maybe pull out your phone. Hold on a second. You walk away, checking your phone.
No, I don't like that one.
You don't like
that feels too easy to fake.
I need a smoke.
I wish.
Yeah.
That's not fashionable anymore.
Yeah.
No, I think I usually like I'm like I go to the bathroom or like I'm gonna go look for someone. Sometimes it's like I'm gonna go look for someone who I was trying to find, and sometimes it's just like, oh, like let me go get some food. I'm hungry. Or
I need to get another drink. Or like
let me go get. Yeah. I need to go somewhere else to get a thing. Yeah, that's the tried and true. Yeah,
right.
Pulling out the phone, I'm just like, unless I had someone like planning to call me on one of those like, all right, at 8:30, like I need the emergency call, like chat with me for 10 minutes, make sure I can like get out of this,
Right.
But that's like That's a weirder situation. That has to be really specific.
Yeah.
I've never actually tried that. It just feels like a movie thing.
So you're in luck. They have re-implemented that experience for
Yeah.
GatherTown.
But you know, the upside is that the experience of being in a Zoom with 40 people is really bad.
It's very bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I much prefer that awkwardness.
It is good to
back.
have the proximity-based audio. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's rad. I kind of want to play Yakuza Kiwami now, because apparently it's the same game engine, right?
Oh yeah, it was really fun. I played it first, and it's great because you get the Kiryu Nishiki story. A lot of
That
it.
might have been the right order to do them, right?
I also figured that like Kiwami would be worse, because everyone was like Zero's the best, and I was like, well, I kind of want to play the first one, but like, if the entire game was sort of meant to be like, oh, you're a fan of this series, here's the prequel. I was like, I'll at least like do the one to make sure I like it.
Yeah.
And the answer was it's great.
No, so Kiwami's good. Yeah.
I thought Kiwami was really, really good.
Yeah. Bummer about Nishiki.
I mean, I guess it's been spoiled for you. Yeah.
Well, he's the bad guy in Yakuza 1, right?
Yeah.
I think that's established fairly early, right? It's not.
It's pretty early. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I thought they were gonna do. Okay. I'm not gonna say anymore. I was about to do some plot analysis, but I realized it might spoil Yakuza Zero for you.
Let me blow through a couple more chapters of this sucker.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You should play Kiwami because you'll really enjoy the experience of Majima. Majima everywhere is hilarious.
Right. I hear it's kind of annoying, actually. Right.
It's extremely annoying by the end of it. Yeah, but like he pops out of like the ground. He's a cop. He's a zombie. You have to go to a hostess bar with him as your date. He's the hostess. It's just like it's they do a really good job. He like throws you he's the stripper at a welcome back party for you.
Okay.
But then when you're like, I'm not having this, and he's like, I'm so insulted. You're rejecting my gift. And like Kiryu has this moment. He's like, it'd be very rude of me to turn this down right
Was
now.
Majima in the original?
Yeah, totally. He's voiced by Mark Hamill.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because he kind of plays like a Joker type figure, right?
Yeah. Yeah, truly a great casting choice, though these games really work in Japanese for me too.
Should I be playing this with the English dub?
I've never heard of it. I just learned that he was.
I mean, it's got like
it's actually like
Eliza Dushku.
Oh wow.
It's got Michael Madsen, Mark Hamill.
Who's Nishiki? That's what I want to know.
Nishiki. Michael Rosenbaum. It's this dude.
Oh, fucking Lex Luthor. Okay, great. Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Okay. Nice.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you play Judgment in English, right?
Judgment, but I've also read that the Judgment dub was like uniquely good.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, who knows? Worth a shot, maybe.
Well, I recommend this. You will enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard not to, right? The games are like all pretty well written, or at least they have like kind of like good plot turns, and the side quests are all hilarious.
They're
and the fighting is just universally bad, and I don't care, right?
Yeah. Oh man. Some side quest was like an old grandma with purple hair and a leopard print sweater, like cut me in line at a octopus stand, and I was like taken aback, but like she was just cleverer than me, and that was the whole quest. It was really funny. They were just like, oh yeah, the 80-year-old women here, like, don't fuck with them. They're tougher than Yakuza. And I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah. I can't wait till you get to play Judgment. But that's not going to happen until the PS5 version.
I want that 60 FPS. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That game's pretty good. The cinematics are all really good looking because I think they're just renders, right?
I think so. They're definitely renders in Zero. It's really obvious when it switches, but like in a cool way.
Yes. Cool.
Yeah. So what's the game look like these days?
The game looks pretty much exactly the same. I have not really futzed. I think
We got the ground back in there. But
This is
that's
the last time. I've had the ground back in there just by default. But pretty much everything is exactly the same.
Sweet.
I don't think I changed anything all that interesting. We can take a look at the commit log.
Cool.
I did fix this issue.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wow. Wait, did you just do that on purpose? You're doing it on purpose. Great.
I'm doing this on
Yeah.
purpose.
Oh, wow. Okay. Huh.
Yeah, so it's just fine now.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. I studied this source code of 3JS a little bit, and I was like, oh, darn. They're just doing something simple. I was overthinking it.
And what was the simple solution? Is there just a GL matrix GL matrix rotation function, or is it?
Yeah. This. First of all, there is. I basically made a spherical coordinate, which is just a 3 vector, and then the spherical coordinates have a radius and an inclination and an azimuth. The radius is essentially the distance from the point you're at from the to the origin. The inclination is how far up the vertical axis you're kind of tilted down by, and then the azimuth is basically how far around the ground plane you are. And it wasn't that far from what I was doing before, but then I think the actual I was running into issues because I was doing rotations rather than just directly converting the spherical coordinates into a position where the where the camera is supposed to be. So that was problem number 1. Problem number 2 is the way that I was orienting the camera as a result of that. But now it's just pretty simple.
Nice.
You just take a spherical coordinate, you convert it into a world position. You use this function that comes with GL matrix to point the camera from that position at the origin, which is where the object is.
That's handy.
And that's it. And then you return the world to view matrix.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yes, very handy. So that's fixed. I also kind of thought about it a little bit, and I figured out why we're missing stuff.
Okay.
We were always like perplexed. Why are we missing the antenna? Why are we missing the size of the turret? And the answer is it's how our algorithm directly says that if the vertex is shared by 2 coplanar, I guess they're not coplanar though. Well, so there goes my argument. Sorry. I didn't figure it out actually, because like there shouldn't be coplanar. There should not be coplanar edges anywhere on the side of the turret. It should all be sections, right?
Yeah, I think you're onto something though. Maybe it's the way that the cylinder is handled here. Is it possible that all 3 vertices? I guess I would say if all 3 vertices of the triangle had different normals, our algorithm would actually print them all, right?
Yeah, I would actually be curious to know. Well, I don't know. Like, can we actually see the contour of the geometry? You can, right?
Yeah.
You kind of see it here. So the normals should all be different. I mean, this is being lit in such a way that the normals are different. So you know what? My theory is wrong.
Can you put the wire solid back on there? I'm curious.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. I think if you can look at sort of the back, so sort of where the gun. So yeah, this is what I expect on the inside.
That's the front barrel of it.
The front barrel.
Yeah.
I think. No, I don't.
At any rate, it's nice that this thing actually like can orbit properly around the around the thing in the middle.
It's delightful.
Yeah.
It looks great. I mean, this whole thing continues to look great.
Yes.
Oh man.
Other thing that I can remember doing is I made another tool called the bench tool, and all this does is it runs stuff in the browser.
Oh, nice. Hell yeah.
But the stuff I'm running can take a long time. So it's literally blocking the thread. And the idea here is that it runs a function in the browser and then emits some piece of data that gets rendered to a code block here in HTML. But the idea is that if we wanted to ever test anything that like took a long time or compared 2 different implementations of something, we could do it in a vacuum, but running in the browser. So we weren't just benching it, from Node.js or something like that.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when we want to do a bench that includes like request animation frame, which like is going to be really hard to simulate ourselves.
Yeah, we could totally do that here. So what to say about this? The thing I was actually, I've only got one bench suite right now, which is the Stack Allocator suite, because I made a Stack Allocator.
Well, you sure
that
did.
doesn't. It's not being used right now. But I become kind of like preoccupied with the idea of eliminating all allocations from our program.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like talked myself down a cliff because I like got pretty deep down into this rabbit hole, and I was like, God, I'm prematurely optimizing right now, which was my concern.
Yeah, but this is one of the things that we definitely had our eye on as an optimization. And like I think we even did a preliminary pass on this, and like the game got a lot faster when we were sort of smarter about our allocations. So
yeah, it's true. So you can't see it right now, but like this is Firefox. Oh, this is Firefox. Yeah. There are occasionally hitches that I get when I run this game, and I don't know why. And I think it's because we do the occasional major GC.
That makes sense.
It just bothered me.
Yeah.
The problem though is that I wish there was an easier way to deal with the whole garbage collection problem. This is getting a little bit into why are we using a garbage collected language to make a game, and it's because we're running it in the browser. But this game doesn't need to do any allocation whatsoever right now. It really doesn't, right? Everything is just like can be allocated on the stack or pre-allocated.
Yep.
And there are ways around it where we can make allocators that generate our objects. So just to give you an idea, the interface for this stack allocator, let's actually go to the test suite because I think that actually presents it a little bit more clearly. You have a push frame and a pop frame. And so this is implementing what I think I wanted to call a slab allocator, but I think that's the wrong usage of that term. But basically the idea is you can deallocate multiple things at the same time. So rather than deallocate one object at a time, you basically say, I'm in an area of the runtime code where I just want to allocate a bunch of stuff. And I'm going to do some computation. And then when I'm done, I just want to clear out all the stuff I allocated. And whether you were careful to make sure that you weren't aliasing those things, you weren't like trying to use the stuff after you deallocate them, that's totally up to you as the programmer to figure out. So you're literally back into like C programming at that point, right? So the idea is like you have an allocator that's probably globally available to you. It probably it allocates all of the same type of thing. It's going to be a vec2 or a vec3. You'd have a different allocator for each one of these objects.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And you'd push a frame, and then you call alloc dirty or whatever on this. Alloc dirty means that you're basically getting the object, but you're not like trying to reinitialize the values inside that object because you're probably going to do it manually after you allocate it. There's another function called allocate default, which reinitializes the object by just like you pass in a function that says like, oh, I'm going to zero out all the values in the vector or something like that. But if you don't care about that, why spend the extra CPU cycles to do it? So probably most of the time you're going to be calling alloc dirty. What this test shows is that once you've allocated past the limit of the allocator, it's going to throw an exception. And then that's basically what the allocator does. And so I think the idea here would be something like anytime you needed a vec3 just for the function that you're in right now, you could allocate the vec3 using this allocator rather than calling new. Use it to calculate your computation and then pop the frame at the end of the function call. Maybe in a finally block. So you have like try and finally. And so, you could early out and just make sure the vector gets cleared out.
Do we get try finally? That's awesome.
In JavaScript?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think we do it anywhere right now, but
no, I don't think we do either. Maybe at some point.
Oh, there is one.
Oh.
What is
Cool.
this? I think this is the level editor. Yeah. Which just is so far gone from working that I think we should actually delete it.
Yeah, it's in Git. We can refer to it.
Yeah.
I support that if it's that busted.
So there are other kinds of allocators that we can make here. I had an idea that we could have what's basically a stack allocator, but it has a height of 1. Like you don't really push or pop. You just like allocate and then clear it out completely. And that would be like our frame allocator. So basically what you'd have is like at the beginning of every frame, you'd clear out the allocator. And then you would just allocate vectors and matrices and whatever it'd actually be multiple different allocators. And then you just have to make sure again that you don't attempt to use that data in the next frame over. And the way that you do that actually, so this stack allocator kind of implements this. You can actually pass in a function that's optional, and we'd only do this in like a debug mode that deinitializes the object when you pop a frame in this case, or when you deallocate the object. And what it actually does is it sets this function. You pass it in there to say like, okay, I want you to like write a bunch of garbage data into the object, so that you can detect a use after free. If I say use after free, does that make sense to you?
It does, yeah, because
Okay.
like you don't want to be accessing memory after you've already marked it as, I mean, free. We're not in C, but like yeah, since we'll be handing it to something else, you want to make sure that value is not read as true data.
Yeah. So the idea here, this use after free detection here is basically we have a test allocator, and when we create that test allocator, this set free function, it sets the value of the object that we're allocating to 69, 69, 69.69, 69, 69. And so the idea there is that if you do happen to use an object that hasn't been reallocated yet and it hasn't been reinitialized, you'll see a bunch of garbage data in it. So that if your program is behaving weirdly or it crashes or whatever, you can kind of go in there with the debugger and go like, oh, I am using something after I freed it.
That's really nice. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
In C and C++, this is a fairly common practice if you kind of roll your own custom allocator. The other thing you'll often see in C and C++ is that you also have to care about like going past the end of a buffer or an array in C and C++. It's freaking horrible. I don't know how people swim in that shit all the time.
It's been so long, but that stuff is a nightmare.
Yeah, you'll essentially write sentinel values after the end of a buffer. So the actual memory capacity or the memory consumption of a buffer is going to be whatever the size of your buffer is plus some extra debug stuff. And part of what that extra debug stuff is writing some sentinel values after that, so that if you accidentally overwrite past the back of a buffer, you can, in debugging, check the back of the buffer and say, like, is it what I expect it to be? And if it's not, then I've accidentally overwritten memory, and I have a bug somewhere. So there's all these kinds of like techniques for basically compensating for the fact that your programming language doesn't give you memory safety. And if we're doing our own allocator and we're doing our own like reinitialization kind of thing, we don't have a memory safety issue in the classical sense, but we have it in the spiritual sense. We have once you have an allocator like this, you can do use after free. You have to figure out how to like make sure that you're disciplined about freeing stuff.
Man, this is really cool.
Yeah. So the reason why I even did this in the first place was because I had read rumors that creating, in particular, typed numeric arrays in JavaScript is slow.
Okay.
So what does that mean? It means actually exactly what WebGL uses, right? WebGL, a vec3 in WebGL is a 3-element float 32 array. A vec4 is a 4-element float 32 array.
And typed arrays, we're not talking TypeScript, but we're actually talking the JavaScript primitive, like
yes,
typed by number of bytes array, which is
we use that a lot in our GLTF.
We use it a lot. Yeah.
So
it's actually
yeah.
I didn't even know this was part of JavaScript until we started this project. Yeah.
I think they actually designed this exactly for OpenGL.
That would make sense because it's really weird and not like part of the normal operating mindset of like strings or numbers are undefined or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's not coercive enough for JS. So it's cool. It's really neat. It's there. It's a bummer that it's slow though.
Yeah, it's weird that it's slow, to be honest.
Defeats the whole
But I don't know.
purpose.
I think it's actually doing a couple of things under the hood. It's creating what's known as an array buffer, which is a raw buffer of bytes, and then around that is what's called a buffer view, which basically enforces. If you were iterating over an array of bytes, you go 8 bits at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you wanted to iterate over an array of float 32s, you'd go 4 bytes at a time, right? And so the buffer view kind of allows you to do that in a way that doesn't force you to like know what the stride of each element is.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So that could be part of the reason why it's slow. I don't know what the other reasons, but in Firefox with this benchmarking tool, if we are using an allocator, if we're comparing allocations between if you're using this stack allocator or if you're just calling new a bunch of times, I measured it to be about 3 times faster using the allocator, stack allocator.
Wow. Okay.
In Firefox, this number becomes like 9 or 10 in Chrome, which is interesting.
I mean, Chrome is, I guess, Firefox has had a pretty good implementation of this stuff for a while, so
it does.
I'm curious, what does Safari give you too? Because it's really, really interesting to see the 3 different.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I confess I never even tried.
Fascinating.
Oh, Safari. It's actually faster to use the primitive arrays in Safari. Which is actually pretty shocking to me, if you think about it.
Like, yes and no, right? I wonder if there's some M1 JavaScript code running on your machine. Like,
Interesting.
I think the processor has some JavaScript specific optimizations built in, and maybe this is the app taking advantage of it.
Yeah. The other tricky thing is that I don't really have a lot of control over garbage collection in this script. And because like the way that these benchmark suites run is that you do things like millions of times in a row. At any point there, the runtime could decide, I want to run a GC sweep. And that would basically kill your benchmark, right? It would add so much noise that it would, and like garbage collection is so expensive that it would probably dominate whatever you're trying to do there, right? So this is actually a really interesting data point, right? If I fire up Chrome right now,
and this actually sort of tracks for me in terms of what I think of as browser performance, top to bottom here.
Yeah. See, the ratio here in Chrome is like 10.
Wow. Yeah.
15. Yeah.
But it's interesting. It looks
12.
like the with allocator is actually running faster than Safari's either version. Is that correct?
Yeah. What's interesting is my GC control isn't working. Oh, you know what it is? It's because I didn't start this browser with the GC flag. Like in order to in order to be able to access the garbage collector in Chrome, you start Chrome with like a particular command line flag, and you expose a garbage collection function. So you can force a garbage collection inside JavaScript.
Cool.
None of the other browsers offer that though, or at least nothing that I could find. I think Firefox has one where you can actually do it from like a physical menu. Like we can actually like open a menu up and like click the garbage.
This is really interesting though, because like with allocator is actually an order of magnitude slower in Firefox than it was in Chrome. That's fucking bizarre.
Oh, you're talking about the actual numbers?
I'm talking about the actual numbers. Yeah, like
Yeah.
Chrome is significantly faster than Safari.
Yeah.
There's an extra 0 on the with allocator version for Chrome.
For Chrome, yeah.
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 Weird.
So maybe it's not so much that that Chrome's not slower. It just has a different relationship between the with allocator and no allocator, right? And I think in our experience, Chrome has been the fastest browser running the game, at least.
Because Safari's been putting up a good fight for me, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, Firefox right now is kind of proving to be the slowest right now, right?
Which is it's a good test.
Well, what is this all about, anyways? Right? The whole point is that we want to try to prevent garbage collection in the game entirely, right? And also, even if we never ran garbage collection and we just turned it off, we don't want to pay the overhead of whatever calling new, just doing a new allocation on something. We just don't want to pay the overhead of it, right? Because that's reorganizing the heap and doing all this stuff under the hood. And I don't want that. What I'd rather it do is just literally this much math, right? Wouldn't it be nice if anytime you allocated a new thing, it would just be literally this much math, right? There's no reorganization of a data structure at all. It's like incrementing a couple numbers.
Yeah, that would be great. And I don't know. It's tough because like to measure the whole system. Honestly, it'd be nice to put the simulate step in bench and run it 1,000 times. I guess we could do that.
But what's tricky is that you have to update your code, right? So I think this is actually a really good example of a function where we could do this stuff. How many intermediate vectors do we create here? There's 2. There's a quaternion we create here. There's a matrix we create here. So that's 4 allocations that we do. And we don't use any of them, right?
I was going to say, how many times do we do that? Yeah.
I mean, this camera function is a once per frame thing, right? We get the camera's world to view matrix once per frame, so it's not that big a deal. But you can imagine like a per entity or per component function that does something like this, right?
Well, and I'm really curious about like the turret system, where I think actually...
Yeah. I think Wall Collider might do something crazy, right?
I bet so, yeah.
Yeah, Wall Collider has a vec2.creates within a loop, right? That's not great, right?
No.
We have
from
these are
values is also a
cases.
create, right? Yeah,
that's a create right there. That's an allocation right there, also within a loop. So I think the idea here is that these would all be, you'd stick at the top of the function a push frame onto this if it was a stack allocator, and then you'd pop it at the end of the function, and all those things would go away. Or you could just have a frame level one, like I was saying, where it's just like you have some global allocator that you don't manage the pushing and popping of, but you just know in the back of your mind ahead of time that like you have to make sure that if you're allocating an object from that, you can't cache it in a return value or something like that, right?
Well, and so this, I guess maybe the original sort of simpler solution that I was thinking is that actually like every system is responsible for its own scratch variables.
Yeah.
Where we just have a fixed number of these per system. Is that simpler, or do we end up in a similar pitfall?
I think it reduces, at the very least, it would reduce the blast radius if we got something wrong, right?
True.
What are the risks? The risk is used after free, right? The risk is that you let something leak out of its little arena of where you're supposed to use something, right?
Fair.
There's not a great way of enforcing that level of discipline unless you do static analysis.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought maybe we could add a type. Like, could you imagine that, like, if we go to like the transform component and it was like a allocated vec2 or something wild like that, where you knew that it was allocated, or like you insisted that it wasn't allocated, not allocated. So it could be permanent, it could live across frames or whatever. But the thing is like, you don't really know at the time whether this is such an orthogonal concern, like how the variable was allocated or not allocated, that it's almost not something that makes sense to put into the type system. Although maybe there are some isolated situations when
it seems like it would come out weird though. Yeah. Okay.
It would come out really weird. Yeah.
That makes the case for the allocator for me for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I think the idea behind like the way that you would do this is you would say like, you would just kind of do like a allocator .vec3.create, right? Let's just say that was the function that we do, right? And then this allocator would be the frame level allocator, so that you didn't even have to care about pushing or popping. You just knew that it would get cleared out. But the onus is on you as the programmer of this function to make sure that this does not leak, right? And you can kind of tell by this is a pure function basically. You pass in the thing that you're modifying, and so there's no leaking going on here, right?
Versus the I guess transforms, wall colliders, everything else. We're actually modifying the vec2 on the object, so we also should not be leaking that. It all seems possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. The cost of it really is just it's going to clutter the code, and you now have another thing that you're worrying about that you didn't have to worry about before. Then it's like, why aren't we just writing this in C? Like,
well, and we ask ourselves that question a lot about this game. So
yes,
I think at some point when this is done, we definitely need to try one. We need to try a Go or a C or a Rust based something.
So I've been looking at where are my bookmarks? I've been looking at this Wasm BindGen.
Whoa.
And this is Rust compiled into WebAssembly, and then you basically include your WebAssembly entry point in a JavaScript file in the browser. And pretty much all the major browser runtimes now support WebAssembly like straight up.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think it's at the point now where an equivalent like WebAssembly implementation of something is likely to be faster than the JavaScript version. I'm not actually sure what guarantees that though, because the original version of a WebAssembly was just like actually transpiling things into JavaScript, right? Like take assembly and make the assembly a bunch of JavaScript statements that operate on a giant array, right? Your giant array was essentially the memory that your C program or whatever was operating.
I guess though, like, can you take the memory optimizations of C and apply it to that by like telling JavaScript not to garbage collect this thing that shouldn't garbage collect, right?
Like that giant array would never get garbage collected.
Exactly.
Right?
So like I think part of the benefit is that you get to sort of I assume originally you got to apply those semantics to JavaScript space, but now I assume browsers do something much more specific to that as well.
Yeah. So they actually have like the original way to do WebAssembly was to like essentially run your program against this giant buffer, and then your JavaScript program would copy out of that buffer and then do whatever it needed to do in terms of WebGL or DOM manipulation or whatever. But they've started to be able to go the opposite direction and inject hooks, like JavaScript hooks, into Rust code or into whatever. Like, there's like a system interface, kind of like it's like FFI, like foreign function interface kind of stuff that you can. But it's actually what the browser is exposing to the hosted language, right? And so here you can actually see that there's like WebGL references in what looks to be Rust code, right? This is Rust here.
Weird. Huh.
So
that's pretty cool.
The problem with it's cool. It's definitely pretty interesting. I don't know how much they're doing that's interesting in this example. They are doing a draw arrays here. The problem is this is not in it's not in a render callback. So I think they draw once and then it's done. And I think they do have an example though of request animation frame somewhere in here. Yes, request animation frame, and it's hilarious.
It's a package. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the request animation frame, and you have to borrow and then convert it to a reference and then unwrap it. And then also like what they're passing into here as a closure, it's like a different variable. Like when they call it again inside the function, it's like G on the outside and F on the inside, and it's like.
Well, G is. What is clone doing there?
It's like the reference counted, heap allocated. Basically replacement of this closure in an option because there's a none and it's just like
Holy
there's
shit.
so many rustisms here that I was like, oh man, this is unpleasant.
Yeah. Wow.
But on the other hand, I think it's worth a shot because I also think that this maybe is cherry picking the most complicated looking part. Like everything that's going to be inside of this function here is just going to be straight Rust, which has its own challenges, but everything inside of this function is just essentially one tick of our game loop. That's where all our code goes.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool this works.
It is. And with Rust, like so many of our assumptions go off the table, right? Like you don't have to heap allocate at all if you don't want to. A lot of this vector nonsense that we're doing, you don't even have to like allocate a new float32 array to have a vector. All you do is create a stack allocated object that happens to be 40 bytes wide, right? That's just like what you would do in C as well. And all of these intermediates, right? All these intermediates here would just be stack allocated objects that just go away magically. And there's no allocation. And at that point, if we were to start littering our code with a bunch of like allocation things and start having to like track, I mean, essentially doing what Rust does, it tracks lifetimes. You have to like, but we'd have to do it as humans and not as a compiler that knew about that stuff. You'd have to say like, is this leaking a value outside of its anointed lifetime? Then it starts to be like, oh, the JavaScript is going to get really complicated and really horrible and ugly. And I think that's when it becomes like, maybe we should rewrite it, right?
Are lifetimes, is that reference counting?
Yeah. In Rust, reference counting is one way to get around not having to have lifetimes.
Okay.
You reference count heap allocated objects. Anything that's allocated on the stack, you have to keep track of its lifetime.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But the type checker does that for you, which is nice.
Oh, that is nice. Okay.
Yeah. The type checker, like, you know how I was like saying, like you could have like an allocated thing, like an allocated kind of thing. The type checker does it differently in Rust, where it says basically you do this kind of thing. Boy, this is going to screw with the syntax highlighter. But you say this transform has a lifetime of A. And this vector also has a lifetime of A. And the compiler kind of knows that what you're trying to say is that essentially the lifetime of this outer object is dependent on the lifetime of this inner object. And so like if this object here goes off the stack before this one, that's a contradiction. And the compiler can the type checker can figure that out statically.
Wow.
It's kind of stuff that like I try to avoid when I write my Rust. I mean, I've only been doing Rust for a very, very short amount of time, but it becomes very confusing to deal with. It's confusing for me to explain it right now, but it would be even more confusing if we tried to implement it in an ad hoc way using the TypeScript type system. I think maybe that's the point I'm trying to get across here.
Yeah, that is very confusing already. Okay.
Yeah. That whole aside was just to say, I don't know. I think we should start to experiment with the stack allocator when it starts when like we're starting to notice garbage collection as being a major problem.
Yeah, and I think if we add a couple more systems, we'll probably see the performance issues that make us want to try this again. So
yeah. None of this would matter if we weren't doing multiplayer.
True.
So yeah.
But where's the fun in that?
Yeah, where is the fun in that? What's Bolo without multiplayer, right? All right. Okay. One more technical point before we dive into game design, because I think I want to talk about game design today.
Absolutely.
Was the quad tree. I think I cleaned up the quad tree a little bit.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah, I saw a bunch of changes in there.
The quad tree, it doesn't do any... Again, I was kind of allergic to allocations, so I was like, I'm going to try to avoid allocations as much as possible. So there were some minor things that I modified there. I think the node query function, where did I put that here? You now pass in the array that collects the results. I think before what was happening is on like every node we create a new array and merge it in with its child results and then pass it back up. You can imagine that's a ton of allocations, right?
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
I think that was the big change there.
Cool.
And then I got halfway into writing a thing that was like would like visualize the quad tree in world space. You know, like we'd actually see the subdivisions of the squares.
That'd be really cool.
It would be really cool, but then I was like, oh, that seems like a lot of futz. But essentially, we'd need to open up this interface because right now, when you have a quad tree, you can't get access to the node structure. It's private, right? So we need to open up an interface that allows you to traverse the node structure.
Gotcha. Cool. That would be fun. Are you still convinced that quad tree is actually not long for the game at all?
Yeah, so that was where I wanted to go with this, right? Where are we using quad tree? The turret system is using quad tree, right?
Yeah.
So, or it's partly using quad tree. Where's the query? Query by world pause.
Mm-hmm.
So you see this come up a lot in the profiles, right? It just pops up a lot when we profile the game.
Yep.
And you see it going into, I guess it makes sense because we have a lot of turrets in the level, right? And it has to query once for every turret. So this might just be cost that we have to pay, right? What is the search space? What did we do here? We're basically saying for every tank,
right, for every
figure out
tank,
which turrets to simulate, right?
Yeah, right, because we actually turned some of these completely off. Yeah. Which, honestly, like, is iterating through this multiple times slower than us actually just doing a quick range check between every turret and the tank before we do any other simulation? Maybe not.
Yeah, so that's an excellent thing to ask, right? Because we can actually, the entity manager knows what all the turrets are, right? It's got this thing. I just iterate over all of those, right? I think we query again when we shoot things. Is that correct?
That sounds right. Or when we do the aiming? Yeah, there you go.
Target idea. Yeah, this is the expensive one, I think.
Okay.
I had another idea, which is that the other problem with the quad tree is that not everything is in it, right? Anything that moves is not in the quad tree, which means the players aren't in there. We don't have too many things that are moving right now. Maybe that's fine. But I think the point was it's hard to re-index, right? Like if something's moving inside the quad tree, you need to like take it out of the quad tree, stick it back in, make sure it's in the right place in the quad tree. And so I think I had this idea where what you could do when you're shooting things is our spatial index becomes a grid. So imagine instead of a quad tree, you have a grid, one for every tile in the game. And if your player was kind of like at the junction point between 4 tiles, you just stick it in all 4 grid points. Right?
That seems really reasonable. Yeah.
Every grid element is an array, right? And it could be a fixed length array. It could be an array of like at most 5 things or something like that. And what you would do is when you're for every turret, you cast a ray, and you basically find all the tiles that ray intersects. And you can do that like in constant time, basically, given the length of the array. It's linear by the length of the array, but you basically run a little like geometry algorithm in a for loop, right?
Right. Yeah. If we know the angle, the angle and the distance, we can pick up every tile, every square tile underneath that line.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And then you can kind of see where this is going with the grid index.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, whether that's faster or slower, I don't really know. I think basically what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I have all these tiles. Give me all the entities in those tiles.
And so I wonder if that is any faster than the quad tree, which is just, well, if we give it a big search space, maybe. Yeah.
The other thing that might be faster about that algorithm is that I don't know how much you remember about this. This is actually kind of like, when I look back on this, it's actually this like fiendishly ingenious, like clever way that we like figured out how to like there are things that block the vision of the turrets, right? I think that this could be easier if we just like started with the position of the turret and then like looked in tiles like right around the turret, see if there's anything that's blocking it, and then like continue to look Well, I don't know. That's a lot,
I
right?
was just say
That maybe. Yeah.
the nice thing about doing the shoot array from the turret and look at tiles specifically is that we find what we hit really fast without having to pull the
Yes.
entire search space. Like right now, we have to search the entire array versus continuing. Like we essentially just be like stepping down the path.
That's a really
Like
good point. So
go down the array until you hit a new tile. Check the tile. Keep going.
there's what you're saying is there's probably some way of taking advantage of the fact that if we look at closer objects rather than further objects, maybe we can early out, right?
Yeah, I think we get to early. Yeah, early out or like hide hit. There's a lot of things that we don't need to actually look at the trees on the other side of the tank for.
Yeah. So maybe how do you know which ray to trace is basically the question. Like, because there's theoretically infinite number of them, right? Going around. They're like an infinity number of rays. But I think what you do is you pick what are the things that are actually targetable by a turret, and then draw a ray from that turret to each of those targetable things.
Yep.
Right. So how do you answer that first question? What's targetable by the turret? Well, you could just iterate over all of them, right? Like there might not be that many of them. If it's just players, then there's only like 3 of them.
It's
right?
it's just players, and and we can scope that by distance.
Yeah, and then you can eliminate by distance, right? And then probably you're down to like 2 or 3 things, and then now you have 2 or 3 rays that you need to step through.
Yep.
Right. And then for that stepping part, you'd use the grid index rather than the quad tree.
Yeah, and for those turrets that are in like the bunker that are just surrounded by walls, like I think right now they actually have to fetch all the objects in range and start
including the trees.
including the trees and the player and all 9 walls around them, and like do a quick check on that versus shooting 2 rays at 2 tanks and being like, I hit a wall.
Yeah.
Call it a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that'd be a really nice speed up there. So that kind of thinking that we just did is unfortunately what we're signed up for all of the, let's call it the AI, right? This is not a neural network, but it is AI in the classic game sense of like, how do your entities behave if they're not being directed by the input of the player directly? So all of the game AI needs to have a kind of lean and mean, not prematurely optimized, but also like algorithmically sound way of doing things. And I think it's worth taking advantage of the fact that we have a grid and we operate on a grid,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the fact that I think especially for player stuff, like being in 4 grid tiles is not a bad thing. Like that's actually really easy to manage. We'll have more player hits that then we'll do a hit test and they might not be in the line of fire, and that's great.
And I think it's also worth doing data structures that are like on the surface maybe a little bit obtuse. So for example, that grid that I was talking about, the fastest possible way that we can make that grid is to make it a single array, right? And the fact that it's 2-dimensional is not that bad, right? As long as you know the width, you can kind of just like column order it or row order it.
Don't we already have some arrays that we operate on like that? It makes total sense.
Bit.
Yeah,
the terrain actually behaves like that.
That's right. And the map entities are also in that format. So I think it's
exactly
super reasonable.
The problem during the game simulation is that you can have multiple things. Like you can have the same player on multiple tiles, and you can also have multiple things on the same tile. So one way you could do that is to have like the single array of lists. But another way you could do that is just have like 10 arrays that are all grids, and just like say I can have at most 10 things on every tile and just like iterate all through all of those. I don't know which one's better, but like I think it's actually worth experimenting with those kinds of things. So that's an example of like kind of a somewhat obtuse data structure, but the advantage of it is that like you don't have this like weird idea of like this sort of like structuring array that's really big, but then like each one of those is like a pointer to some other like arbitrarily sized list.
And I feel like we could sort of measure. I mean, that bench tool is great because now we can sort of measure that implementation where we do the long list that has lists and then 10 long lists that are single value and see what happens. Because that, if writing the helper function to get up to 10 items out of that isn't a performant hit, like, yeah, let's do it. That makes total sense.
Gosh, you can see what a colossal nerd snipe this is once you start thinking down these lines,
Oh,
right?
100%. Yeah.
Because like we can even take it further, right? So the nice thing about a grid is that it's easy to like update, right? Like that's actually a thing that like we were reluctant to update the quad tree live, right? We didn't like when things were moving, like we were just reluctant to do that. But now we can kind of say like, well, anytime we alter a transform, let's go into the grid and like just change something, right?
Yep. Yeah, if we have the previous position, we can take it out and put it back in where it is now, and it's
Yes, exactly.
super easy.
Yeah.
And I think that I like the move to grid coordinates too, because like wherever bullets are, like all we want to do is check what's under their 1 to 4 grid coordinates. So like, we should just do that. It'll make our search spaces a lot easier.
Yeah. And then I think we can lean on the assumption that like an object is not any larger than a single grid tile. But if it was, like that would have to change your whole assumption again. Like you'd have to like, well, I don't know. You could basically just say that like
It's in multiple grid tiles.
It's in multiple grid tiles.
Yeah. Yeah, the player is essentially that object right now if it's crossing the lines, which is totally fine. That's cool.
Yeah. So the nerd snipe goes even further, right? So now, like, how do you write the code that updates the grid, right? Well, you could do it every time you modify a transform. Is that going to be annoying? How do you do that? Do you have an event listener that like because it's kind of an orthogonal thing? Like, do you really want to clutter every time you modify a transform with this call to this extra grid thing? You kind of don't, right? So you kind of want either the transform to have a way of just announcing to the world, "Hey, this happened. If you care, do your stuff," right? But it gets complicated. Like maybe you do want to like explicitly update the grid sometimes and be dumb.
That is. You're right. That is quite the snipe. Damn.
Yeah, or you could do it once per frame, just at the end. But that means that all of your intermediate calls to the grid are off because you might have updated this position of something. Yeah, so it's like it's a very deep talking point here. Now, with all that said, is there anything else technical that's rubbing your gourd, or we can go into design if we want to?
No, let's think about some design for a minute. Yeah,
let's talk about design. Okay. All right. Would it help to draw? I wanted to talk about guns, but like I also wanted to just talk about where we were going with design and that sort of thing, and where we wanted to go. So I'm not sure what the right medium for me to present all this stuff in. I could just be in Dropbox paper for now.
Oh yeah, I like this document a lot.
Yes.
I was thinking the way we've got properties here, your list of general properties are actually. And the way you made every weapon basically a composition of those, I really liked. And it made me want to think about like actually having what the player control be the composition of that. Like you buy, I don't have a highlighter here. Like you buy stun damage type and put that on your gun, and then you have like a electric shot or something. But like, but you could combine that with a like. Splash damage, so it's like an electric like mortar, which I was like, why do I like that? And it's because it's Hades.
Yeah, so you've immediately gone to the heart of what I think is an interesting game design challenge.
Yeah,
and it's about how we communicate about the game, right? When I started designing, I actually started by just designing these guns, and I'm like, how do I even talk about these guns? I'm gonna throw up a whiteboard real quick,
cool.
just in case, just so we can have one.
Yeah.
It looks like I have to use Miro because I don't have a USB cable right now on me.
Hop into my own Miro.
I'm not even logged in. I wonder if people can like determine my 1Password by like analyzing the acoustics of my keys coming into the microphone on the Twitch stream.
That is a real attack. But I assume it is fairly impractical.
Can't people like image the interior of your apartment by like basically being on your Wi-Fi router?
Oh no. Is that true? I hate it.
Because they can basically like determine.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I believe you because the weird sort of like side attack of all that.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, just the weird attack that people do with that shit. blows my mind.
Yeah.
Wait, how do I get to Jeff View? There we go. There's Jeff View.
The problem is there's two Jeff views. There's one on my laptop and there's one on
Oh no.
one for the stream. Yeah, it's just the way it goes.
No, I'm with it. I'm looking at it.
Okay. Well, I need to make sure I'm looking at it because I don't actually know what the right scale is that they want me to be using here. Let me draw a little squiggle here just so I know where I am
Okay.
in the browser as well. Ah, okay. So approximately yay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about guns.
Yeah.
And we don't have to talk about guns. I mean, there's actually a lot more about game design, but this is actually like a nice kind of a little teaser to warm your brain up, right?
Yeah, well, and at least leaving guns in their entirety behind, I was thinking that each one, like this sort of like combination of attributes, has a really nice, like it could apply to your movement and to your helper, which is what the drone is, and to your weapon. So like we could actually have like multiple attributes for like a couple systems that all work in interesting ways. Yeah.
So the first gun that we'd have is my little tank. Is the standard shell. It's what we know and love.
Pop back over to Miro, yeah.
Yeah. What we know and love. Boy, that's really, really
that could be dim. A little zoomier on the That's getting better. Yeah.
Let me also increase the pencil size. I really don't like Miro. I regret it.
Really? Oh, but I'm still a fan.
It does the thing that I want, which is it works on stream.
Yep.
Okay.
Cute. Yep.
Standard. Standard shell. What are the things that we know about this? Well, to describe it in contrast to some other guns, you could say that, well, how do you even shoot it in the first place? I kind of like the way it works right now.
Yeah, it's like a straight line.
Well, you hold down the mouse, you hold down a button to shoot, right?
Yep, hold it down. Feels not like a machine gun, but not like a shotgun.
It's got an auto rate of fire, right? It's not instantaneous, right? You can imagine like a lot of FPS games, when you shoot, the whether you hit somebody or not is determined immediately. That's definitely not the case for our game, right?
Oh yeah. Is there a word for that? It's not a hitbox weapon. It's a projectile.
Missile.
It's actually
projectile. It doesn't damage. It damages your target, or it damages the first thing that it hits, right?
Yeah. No pass through. Better word for that too.
There's no real area effect, right? No splash damage, no
splash.
Anything like that, right?
Yep.
No splash. And it damages once, right? So when you break down like all of these principles, you can start to think about like weapons that don't behave in any one of these dimensions, right? And it starts to become really fun and cool to think about that, right? So when I broke down all of these principles, these properties, I actually was coming at it just from the perspective of being able to like talk about weapons. So like a contrast to this that I thought would be cool to do is something like a railgun. Palm rejection is not working very well.
Darn iPad.
What do I have right here? This little tiny yellow dot that I don't seem to be able to erase.
I see it. It's probably barely making it onto the stream because it's a tiny yellow dot.
Okay. So let's talk about the railgun, right? So the thing I like about the idea I like about the railgun is that maybe you're charging it up for a while.
Yeah, it's kind of got a.
It's got like a charge.
What are these? Are like magnet drive or something? They have to like power up the electromagnet.
And then the second thing is that like you basically see like a giant like a elongated quad that get drawn to the screen.
Yep.
And then it like immediately hits its target, right?
When does it hit its target and everything else? Does it like shoot a line through everything, or is it
Exactly. So those are all interesting questions, right?
totally.
So first of all, like what did we talk about up here? Well, you hold a button down to shoot the standard shell, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a little bit different. You hold down to charge. And then let go to fire.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many variations of the way that you could do this, right? You can imagine like clicking and holding, and if and maybe it just fires after a certain like a specific warm-up time, regardless of whether you're ready to shoot it or not. And that makes it kind of a timing game, right? You actually have to like make sure that you're maybe leading your target a little bit, because you know that in 2 seconds it's going to actually shoot.
Yep.
It could be that you can hold and charge indefinitely. That's the way that like a lot of games work, where you just like hold and charge something.
Yeah, but there's also the hold charge, and it just like pops off. Like sometimes,
After a certain amount of
sometimes you
time.
can only hold the charge for like a couple
Exactly.
beats longer. Yeah.
So there's the whole like in between. There's like a minimum charge time, a maximum charge time,
Mm-hmm.
and the maximum charge per time could be infinity or anything less than that, right? It's not a projectile, right?
Not a project. Nope. No, it's
Not in the sense that you're like trying to shoot a missile that is visible and it's self-simulated as an entity, right? It's not. There's no bullet there, and instead it's instantaneous, right? And I actually think that one of the funny things about instantaneous shooting is that you kind of don't want to allow that weapon in a multiplayer game unless you put some type of constraint around it, right? Because otherwise you can't, especially because our control is like literally I'm going to put my crosshair over some dude and then click and then fire, right?
Yep.
So one of the constraints is the charge mechanic, right? It literally is like you have to charge it up.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Then let go.
It's got to be. Well, and each one of these has to be not game breaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's all these kinds of ways that you can design the weapon so that it's not game breaking, and maybe it's not good to be super speculative about it. It's always just good to just implement it and then see what happens. Yeah. But just thinking about it ahead of time, it's good to have like get like a corpus of these different types of weapons that we could have in there. Mm-hmm. Now, another thing that you would want in a railgun like this, right, is it penetrating, right? And I think this is the question that you were asking. Does it hit everything in a line? Mm-hmm. You can imagine that there's like a laser or something like that that's just like it shreds everything in a line. It'd be really, really satisfying to shoot, right? Mm-hmm. You could have another version of that that's non-penetrating, that just hits the first thing
interesting.
In that line of fire, right?
Yeah, and could hit harder, right? Because this is a physical object versus,
energy.
And
the other thing that you kind of want is knockback, right? You want some kind of like knockback against the target.
Did we have that at one point?
We've never programmed it before.
We've never. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and here's the opposite of knockback.
Kick.
Which is kick.
Yeah.
Right. I guess theoretically, if this were a true railgun, it doesn't actually make sense to put a railgun on a tank because is it Newton's third law? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
Like theoretically, the kick would be the exact same as the knockback, right? Like that's basic. If it was an efficient system.
Yep.
In fact, because it's not an efficient system and there's air friction, you as the firer would see the worst of it, right? But you know what? This is not a realistic physics simulation. Like this is like what we want is like, something that like feels cool. The kick's got to be less than the knockback.
Is that why these are magnetically driven, so they don't actually apply force to the shooter?
You have to apply force to the shooter, though.
Yeah.
Because even if it's a magnet, it's still resisting in the opposite direction. Yeah.
Maybe it's just they're on boats so that the water can absorb some of that too.
Yeah, I think the whole world is electromagnetic, right? The fact that I can hold this pen is because the electrons on my finger are resisting the electrons on the pen. Right?
That's a good point, and sort of is a little mind melting. But yeah, okay. Fair. That's a great point.
Okay. One more example before I kind of get to the point that I'm trying to make here. What's an interesting one? How about a mortar?
I say more is interesting. I also love the things like mines or flamethrowers, or even I was thinking that a melee thing would be interesting in this too.
Melee would be amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, can you scroll down? You're a little behind the faces.
oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the reminder. So the mortar is, I'm going to call it shotgun. You click once, it fires. Then you have to let go and click it again to fire again, right?
Yep, that seems reasonable.
Yeah. It is a projectile, just like our standard shell, right? The interesting thing about this is it's got an artillery effect, right? It doesn't hit anything in the intermediate line between the shooter and the target, right?
Oh, right.
So whereas
you can
the
pop over
railgun,
trees. Yep.
Yeah. Whereas the railgun or the standard shell they do hit intermediate targets, right?
Right. So this always hits. It hits whatever area it's aimed at.
This you probably do want splash damage, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Splash, yes. And then what we haven't even talked about in any of these is like how much damage it does. That seems like almost the most boring property out of everything, right?
Yeah, more or less. And I think that's like, yeah, that I care the least about. They should all do sort of an equivalent amount of damage for how often you can hit with them or something, right? Like, I feel like there's sort of a every weapon hits the same, but how you play changes that. Like you can get 3 bullets off versus 1 mortar.
Yeah. So the reason why I sort of brought up these 3 different examples is that if you think about it, like each one of these bullet points, you could kind of genericize it a little bit, not necessarily in terms of how the game is implemented, but just in terms of how we talk about it, right? And so, for example, like the hold to charge, the shotgun, the automatic rate of fire for the standard shell.
Yep.
The property that I called that was triggering, I believe. Did I even put it? Oh, trigger type.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I had trigger type. And so I basically kind of just like came up with a bunch of dimensions that we could classify different weapons by. And like just by playing with these properties, you can kind of like come up with an idea of what a weapon might look like if you sort of varied things, right? You can almost make like a n-dimensional matrix of these things, flipping the switches on and off and just like saying, well, what is that thing there?
Well, it's cool because it'd be interesting if our weapon system could actually be like a bit mask of these properties.
Right.
And have that apply through the system just for on a tank.
Yeah. So other properties that I had talked about, like damage and range are obvious ones. There's damage types. You could have stuns where it stops your movement, or it damages stamina if we had a stamina or mana system. We could do, if we had a shield, like you can imagine a kind of like EMP type thing that only hurt shields.
Yeah.
There's the question of speed. I think the first kind of branch of speed is whether it's instantaneous or non-instantaneous once it fires. But then you can also have ideas of like accelerating projectiles, right? You can imagine a rocket, like a rocket propelled grenade that starts off really slow, and you can even drive away from it a little bit, and then it finally shoots off, that
would be cool.
Which is kind of a cool idea, right? Yeah. You can have weapons that can intercept other projectiles, right? There's knockback and kick, which you talked about. We talked about splash damage. Penetration is basically the idea of like whether it hits intermediate targets or not. There's this trajectory, whether it's a linear weapon or an artillery. Trigger type we talked about. There's also guidance, right? You could also have something that sort of bends towards the target a little bit. The target is moving, right? Or it could be just like straight up homing, right? So you actually raised an interesting question, which I did definitely want to talk about, which is like, is this something where we could almost make this a bit mask and encode into the implementation of the game?
That would be really cool. Yeah, and I think it's probably, I'm trying to imagine what the alternative would be, where we actually have to sort of do a case by case implementation of each system. Yeah, which does sound nightmarish. Versus being able to like actually tweak our thing based on properties, which I think we'll want to be doing.
Yeah. I thought about that a lot, and I wasn't sure where I ended up, to be honest.
Okay.
So there's actually a bunch of different ways that you can take this concept of like, we're kind of like high level theorizing about weapons. Like, and I think that you have to do that. Like, I think you have to, like, if you're designing weapons, at the very least in the conceptual space of design, you have to be able to have these dimensions to be able to compare different weapons, to be able to talk about whether they're game breaking, and more importantly, how they are game breaking or game assisting. Are they useful? Are they not? Are they too similar to each other? That's why we have this taxonomy of different properties. The next level of applying that would be somewhere in the implementation, where somehow the mechanics of the actual runtime of the game also obey these abstractions, and essentially different weapons are like basically instantiations of these different things, right? Which I think is kind of getting close to what you're talking about, right, with the bit masking and all that sort of thing. And then I think the third tier is if you expose that to the player directly, right? Like, are these actual properties that the player is aware of?
Yep.
And certainly, like in a Dungeons and Dragons type RPG, you do actually see the guts on the outside a little bit that way, right?
Yeah,
a lot of games. Yeah, sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, I think I imagine sort of the 2.5 of that, where it's like some of these are exposed, or like they're exposed as a combination. Because
Yeah.
I feel like actually the player should not get to choose trigger type for any of this. Like that should be tied to something else.
Yeah. So I think where I'm at right now in thinking like how do we want to approach this is that we should start with the first thing. Obviously, we kind of have to, and then gradually work our way outwards from there. And I think for even the first 3 or 4 weapons that we implement, whether or not these properties emerge as things that we can kind of like extract into common systems, I think we have to play a wait and see approach. And it's the exact same sensibility that informs whether or not you should move code into a function.
Totally.
Right? When do
yeah.
you dry? When do you not dry? Right.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think, trying to add a second weapon at all will sort of start breaking down some of what needs to change in the current code base anyway. Because like the player and the turret and all that stuff is interesting. Also, every bullet needs to know what it was fired from, or like what its what its path forward is, and it loses that information once it leaves the player. So something about that has to be encoded.
Yeah.
I can definitely see a lot of ways this is sort of gonna fall through for us, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. And like we do have a component-based architecture already. Like you could imagine that maybe some of this would break down into components, right? So just to sort of like round out the conversation, like there are just some ideas of weapons that I kind of like threw down just because I was just trying to think of what would be out there. After we go through these, I do want to actually pop up a level abstraction, like yet another one, and like say like, is it even worth having a lot of diversity in weapons? Why do we have these? How does this fit into our larger vision of what the game is going to be? Right. But just really quick, like I thought like it'd be cool to have a version of the standard shell that is like, I called it the big shell, which is like shotgun triggering instead. Like you have to click every time you want to shoot it because it's really big. I like the idea of it having kick and knockback. Like it kind of like just sort of like knocks you back a little bit. I like the idea of it having a blast radius too.
Yep.
But it's basically some kind of like high damage variation with all the kind of like conventional things that come with that idea, right? Immediately, like you kind of have an idea of how this gun is going to kind of work, right? So it's almost stereotypical in that regard. Laser is basically it's a charge shot that fires after reaching a threshold. Whether it's max charge or not, I don't really know. It's instantaneous. It's also penetrating. This is the idea of just like, what if you had a penetrating and instantaneous weapon? Well, it's probably a laser, right? Like, what else would it be?
Yep, and that screams like maybe low damage to me, and yeah,
low damage, shield only damage, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and again, I think that why is it low damage? It's because like if you had penetrating instantaneous, it's just like it would be way too overpowered if it did anything.
It kills you. Yeah.
I mean, the other way you can limit it is ammo, right? It just it's like it consumes a lot.
Ammo, cooldown, a bunch of different ways to handle that.
Or there's like the minimum charge time and the maximum charge time are identical. So that makes it an accuracy problem to use, right? You have to like charge.
And charge and like it pops off. Yeah.
Yeah, it pops up immediately. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A flamethrower. I'm like not super in love with this idea of a weapon, but like basically you'd have. I didn't describe this as a property, but the idea of like the width of the field, right? Like. Like a spreader gun, you'd have like a wide field.
What sort of, and even not necessarily a wide field, it's like large projectiles, right? If we think of the flame as you can sort of create the wide field as the player, but like it should shoot sort of large, relatively slow moving things out the front of the tank.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Potentially side effects as well that we haven't thought of. Like it would be cool if the trees could burn. Right?
You're doing Breath of the Wild.
I'm doing Breath of the Wild a little bit, yeah. But I actually do.
Which I don't hate. I love that.
That the sort of. I really want this game to be about, and we're getting into the high level thing again. Like, I really would love to have this game be have a fair amount of unintended consequences. Mm-hmm. I think that makes the building aspect of it, the real time strategy aspect of it, feel really rich. You know?
Yeah.
And a lot of the real-time strategy part of it is like trying to maybe mitigate some of the risk. I don't know. That might be a little too fluffy, but like you want to build walls, you want to lay mines, you want to like try to make sure that you're compensating for the fact that like.
Right. Like I think a lot of games that I really like, especially in terms of strategy, but like when offered something powerful, there's generally a like pretty concrete way to counter it.
Yes.
So like, yeah, if the laser is shield only damage, it's got to be that like, you know, your health is, it's either really powerful, but like also you have a lot of non-shield things. They have to like lay mines to hit your armor or something. But like, yeah. Or if it's a railgun, like you build walls to protect yourself and get really good at that.
100%. So I think the mantra is that like I want to be able to do cool shit because I was just sitting here thinking about different weapons and it's like, oh, it wouldn't be cool if you had a laser or wouldn't it be cool if you had a mortar or anything like that. But you want to have counters to all of those things, whether it's in the way that weapon works and it's basically difficult to use, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of like how you kind of, or that it's limited use, or that there are interesting defensive implements, which we haven't talked about yet. Or you can kind of build your way around those things, right? Yeah,
I was thinking the like the three things your tank has is the body, the gun, and the builder, including being able to build different types of things. Like maybe you could choose to build double walls or something.
Right.
I'm very excited by all these possibilities. Also, we should bring the builder back.
Yes, we should definitely bring Builder back. Maybe that's a good way of like figuring out how to get Builder in there with our new graphics and with our new networking as well, in a way to make it performant. It's a nice challenge. So
networking sure is the tough part there.
It's very tough. I was kind of thinking to myself while we were wandering around the grocery store today, like, do we need to go to a model where the server does authoritative like state transfer? You know, rather than it being like the server saying, this is the input that happened on this frame. The server saying, okay, this is where this thing is on this frame. And you didn't know that until now. And the client just has to figure out how to render that in a way that feels realistic to each player, even though it might not be like completely consistent across every client.
Boy, that's a good question. I do think especially for the builder, like I don't want it to choose two different paths.
It can't. It literally cannot, right?
Sorry, you're saying it can't do that based on...
Oh, no, sorry, you're right. It literally must not.
It must not. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
like,
what I meant.
If the pathfinding is on the client, it absolutely could. Like, it could path to somewhere that would be inaccessible on another client, which would really suck.
I think as long as we make sure that the simulation is deterministic, which I think our assumption is that it is currently.
That's true. It would get rewound, yeah.
It would get rewound. It's just slow is the thing that I'm worried about.
Does our A-star get any better with the addition of grid-based reasoning?
I think it does.
Yeah. I think we might already be using some of that, but maybe we could actually lean into it more to make it more performant.
Yeah.
Because actually, like, yeah, for like an entire, I don't know how long it takes to move across tile, but it doesn't have to recalculate anything for 8 frames, 10 frames.
And our A star would be amenable to caching, except that we have walls and destructible terrain, and we want to be able to have the guy like be able to like navigate through. And like again, like the question of terrain is actually a mechanic that we haven't even talked about in forever. But like, do we want something that will slow your tank down? That was a classic Bolo thing, right? You drive into the marsh.
We absolutely do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've always intended the blue terrain to slow you down.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Which your A star should account for.
Yep.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, which I think we could do because we have a way to weight that if we need to.
Yeah. You know, I mean, come to think of it, it's actually not. It's not a bad thing for the terrain to impose like different weights on the pathfinding, because it still doesn't affect the cacheability because the terrain is, I think, by definition, non-alterable.
True.
The problem is when you have obstacles that the thing needs to get around, and if that data updates frame to frame and can be rolled back or rolled forward, then your pathfinding becomes expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe it's just that we'll figure out a way to do the pathfinding fast. We need to be able to run the pathfinding for, I don't know, maybe it's just the builder that does pathfinding. Like we'd have to figure out like what types of entities we want to add. You could imagine a spider mine, right? That like comes after somebody and like and blows up, right?
I love that shit. Yeah, that'd be really fun.
Right. And that's a kind of like explosive that is very slow and has to pathfind. It's not linear at all. It's like and it itself can hit other mines, right? So you can have defensive emplacements that will thwart it.
Oh, that'd be really cool. Yeah.
But the idea of it's really cool, right?
It's a great idea. There's so much stuff to do.
Yes. Real quick. I thought it'd be cool to do. I think my head is just too much in modern gaming right now. I think this is like partly a Hades inspired thing, but like, wouldn't it be cool if the tank could dash?
It's super funny, but also it's a cyber tank, so absolutely.
Yeah. And the dash to me, it could totally break the game, but it to me is the way that you deal with. It's one of the ways that you can deal with a laser.
Yep.
Right. If you had a railgun or you had a laser that had instantaneous targeting.
Because you should actually be seeing it charge up as well. Like the other player's gun should start like having the laser dots on it.
Exactly.
So you should be able to anticipate that happening. Yeah.
You need the cues that you're being targeted by a powerful weapon. Mm-hmm. And so dash would be cool. I thought some notion of a shield would be nice too.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's really cool about shield stuff is it's like recharging health. It's just a really fun mechanic, and that would work super well for this.
Can you imagine a shield that you actually had to target with the turret too? That'd be kind of cool, right? You almost had like, what if you had a shield on the back of the turret?
Oh, that's really neat. Yeah,
that'd be like a really weird mechanic to mess with.
Mm-hmm.
But
there's so much that would be really fun for this.
It is incredibly deep, right? Like actually, the shield on the back of the tank is interesting, right? Imagine that it was like a 90-degree arc. Mm-hmm. And like centered around the back of the turret. So you could use that to either save yourself, but now you have to like make this choice between, do I want to shoot the thing that I'm targeting, or do I want to defend myself from an attack right now?
Or does
that accidentally make me shoot my buddy? You know, like there's all kinds of like kind of wacky stuff that happens as a result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I know I said melee, which sounds really weird for this game, but I would actually love a like tank moves faster, like a faster no shield armor only thing with like spikes on it that does like you're intended to run into people or something.
You could totally have like the cattle prod or whatever. You can even give the tank a little sword that you could swing at.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's a same as the turret, but yeah, like a blade or something. That would be really cool.
But if you had a dash, you could dash into people, and if you had like the special damage field or something like that at the front of the tank.
I mean, I'm with it.
Yeah,
that sounds really cool.
Everything would be really great, right?
Yeah, but I want to make it like I want to have a couple varieties of play style sort of be represented in that as well.
Yeah. Okay, and then just to talk about building really quick, I think we've talked about walls. We talked about turrets. There's mines that you could lay. There's boats. That's a classic Bolo
Boats.
thing. Is that weird?
I don't think so. Boats are a great idea.
Yeah. There's bridges that you can build. Um, and I was kind of thinking about like, are there any other things we could build? Like this is actually this gets into the realm of like weird like just video game shit. It's not like a facsimile of anything that's in real life, but like you could lay down like a little. This is actually a little bit too Mario for me now that I think about it. But like a little tile that like is like directional, and it's like a little arrow that points in one direction. When you drive over it, it shoots you in that direction.
Have you been playing, what is it, Super Mario World 3D or something?
It's actually kind of Mario Kart, right? Or F-Zero, you know, the little dash.
I was playing the new Mario with a friend the other day, and it has exactly that in it. In like the platformer Mario, which is really funny.
You know, there's a new Mario game.
That's what we were playing. Yeah, we were playing like,
Okay,
the brand new
what
one.
is it
Yeah.
called? The Bowser, like Mecha Bowser or something like that.
Super Mario 3D World Bowser Fury. It's too long of a name.
It's a very strange format, right?
Yeah,
a Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury.
It's exactly what it's called.
Oh, come on, GameStop. Why am I getting like an ad block from you?
I mean, honestly, something on your computer is doing you a service by blocking game stuff.
It's true.
Let's be real.
I think in Dropbox Paper, look. I don't know if you can see this on the stream, but it like I get a little
shit.
like there's a counter for how many requests
I can see that.
the microblock is blocking, and Dropbox Paper has like 1,000. I think this is just the telemetry on this page. It's like, what in God's name are they doing? Yeah, event log, Dropbox.com.log.
Wow, that is a lot.
I hope it's not breaking my use of this app. Gosh, web pages are so expensive.
It's unbelievable to me that this is what we came up with.
Yeah.
I'm super happy that we seem to be like totally fucking up like all these ad tracking and different systems with Apple's new privacy stuff.
Yeah.
Like the fact that Facebook is just furious means that like everything's going really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Fuck them.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yep, I hope to see an end to tracking networks someday. Maybe someday soon.
No. At any rate, let's see. There's more Mario stuff in here.
Yeah.
Sticky tiles. You can imagine like laying down essentially swamp.
Would you call it swamp?
Yeah, swamp. Yeah,
Oh.
or whatever it is in Bolo that like makes you slow down when you drive over it. Right?
Oh yeah, totally.
There are like turbines was basically like a fan that like blew you in a certain direction or pulls you in a certain direction. This is all like a little bit wacky, but like I was trying to think of like what are the things that you can build. You know?
No, exactly. Like there's a lot of things we could build. It's really cool.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot that needs to be done in this game, but if I had to project, getting this stuff to feel good next to all of this arcadey shit that we've just been talking about, like dashing and like kind of cool guns, getting that to be in the same, let's say, time scale as building is going to be tricky, right? Because a lot of this stuff up here is about like, it's not twitchy per se, but it is kind of like just arcade kind of stuff. It's literally what we've got here. You drive your little tank around and you like drive towards the turrets and you like shoot at them and you dodge stuff. How do you force the player to engage in the building mechanic? Right?
Yeah, I was wondering if this should actually be more sort of like, I don't know if arena style is a silly thing to say, but like you end up playing sort of like on opposite sides of another player. And like could we make it a game of like, I don't know, like a battle strategy between you two in a way that this really hasn't been quite yet. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like you have an empty arena, there's like maybe some mountains and some trees, but like all these tanks, like no tanks and walls.
I'm embarrassed to say I don't even know the objective of the original Bolo. Like you could build these cool bases, and that was just like fun from a almost like sandbox type perspective. This is I want to just build this like kind of cool impenetrable base.
Yeah, but that's totally what it was, right?
But then you also wanted to attack your buddy's base, right?
And did you have a buddy in that game, or was it? Yeah, that's.
I think it was like 8-player multiplayer, right? It was like
that's true.
astonishingly wide. So I think that's going to be the tricky thing to resolve is how to incorporate the building into the game, right?
Yeah.
In a way that is like really compelling.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it'll be really fun to try, and also I would love us to. I think we can do a good job of. I don't know. I think if we do more multiplayer together, we'll sort of like see what is really fun about that, and maybe with some of these systems in place, we can sort of get towards that.
Yeah. One thing that you could do in original Bolo is like the turrets were motherfuckers, right? They were impossible. They like shot like the rate of fire was just like extremely fast. And the behavior of our turrets has not changed fundamentally since the first time we built them.
No,
right?
they're still the same old turrets.
They're kind of chumps, right? They're kind of easy to kill at this point now that we're healthily in 60 FPS land. But what if they were really difficult to fight? And that's what forces you to build stuff, right?
Yeah, or it's like you get to. I was thinking if it's always multiplayer, like each person has the ability to put down one pretty badass turret from the start. That sort of forces you to react going forward. Like if you can put something really dangerous out there, that's your buddy.
Yep.
Then suddenly I have to start building walls to make sure that I don't die from that direction or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
The other reason to build is if you have something to defend. Right.
That is a great point.
So
we should play some MOBAs.
Right.
Like the whole
there's a little bit of like a capture, like I think it's fundamentally like kind of capture the flag type gameplay, right? You build walls and either in Bolo it was like you capture everybody's pillbox, or you capture the little recharge stations, because the recharge stations don't recharge you until you've driven over it and sat on it for a while.
That's right. Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you see a lot of automated defenses and walls around the recharge points. So I wonder if the recharge points were the point of the game. I don't even remember, right?
I think I never actually got a good game of multiplayer Bolo going. I was too young.
I wasn't too young, but I think we were just interested in like building up a cool base. Right?
Yeah. Well, it's a really weird game.
Yeah. But I think there's a level of Bolo gameplay that we just don't appreciate right now. Like it kind of makes me wonder if there are advanced games that we can see.
It's hard, dude. It's been really hard to find any. It's been hard to find stuff about Bolo because, like, I feel like it did not.
Bolo takes on Chutoy 3.
Go on. What does that mean?
Chutoy 3 is, I don't know if that's an algorithm or a person. Okay, so he's driving around and do my best game commentating here. Can I full screen this? Is that gonna?
Yeah, it totally works.
Okay. Tank is over here.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so he's trying to do a pillbox take here, right? And so he basically placed a...
Oh my...
I'm going to go back.
Gosh, they do so much damage, yeah.
He places a tile next to it to obscure its fire, right? Do you see the angling there that he's doing? Yeah, and it just like kicked his ass, right?
Oh,
but
so
now
funny.
He's taking the pillbox, and now his little guy is going out there and rebuilding the wall. Pillbox is still not dead. And now it's dead. He collects the core. And there's a ton of pillboxes here, right?
And then he puts his own. So he has his builder. It's notably, I don't think pillboxes shoot builders, which is.
So he's using the pillbox there as his own little wall, and he used a pillbox to kill another pillbox.
I was gonna say,
see that?
These pillboxes are also chumps.
Yes.
Interesting.
But they're chumps in a way that you can't just like drive up to them and then he dies, right? So I don't know. I'm not sure what advanced gameplay is here for Bolo, but
Huh.
what is this algorithm giving me right now? It's kind of crazy.
I don't think Bolo survived into 2020 in a
Yeah,
very weird way.
it kind of didn't, right?
Yeah.
No, this is like a weird.
Is this older Bolo? Like, was there a DOS? I was gonna say it is a DOS game. Is this a DOS sort
So
of game?
Bolo, I think. Remember we looked at this like first stream when we started talking about Bolo. We looked it up in Wikipedia, and I guess there was a novel written in the 60s about cybernetic AI tanks called Bolo.
Oh yeah.
And so it probably spawned a whole generation. I'm pretty sure that the Bolo that we're trying to remake is the like the canonical video game Bolo, but like it looks to me like somebody made a different one. Oh, you just like crashed into a wall. What is the point of this game?
Cyber tanks, baby.
Yeah. AI tanks. This is Bolo practice. I don't know if this person's any good. Okay, he's just building a wall in nowhere.
This is so funny.
He's just laying mines. All right, let's see if he gets any better. I like how his player name is me.
Me.
It's on a boat. Now I can destroy the land. That's actually not a mechanic I remember.
Yeah, you can fuck it up somehow.
Yeah, I think I remember sinking people while they were riding boats was like a big part of the game, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah, and there's a weird amount. You can like flood stuff, right?
What
Like,
does this number 5 mean? Is this like the 5th pillbox?
I don't know, but it's fucking him up.
Yeah, he's getting crushed.
Me at Macintosh just lost his builder, so
Yeah.
sorry, me.
How do you know that? Oh, his builder's dead here. Is that how you know?
I'm reading the newswire at the bottom of this
Oh,
Bolo
yes.
window.
Oh yes, we need a Chiron is what we need in our game. That's like the number one. Forget making the shooting and the building align with each other. That's not the key point. The key point is the Chiron.
Absolutely what we're missing, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to make Bolo
Oh, there's his builder
it's
parachuting
coming
in.
back. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I love. It's so funny. Yeah, I want to do this that doesn't feel so incredibly slow.
Yeah. This game was definitely hostile to the user.
Yeah.
Like, look at him driving right now. It's just like he's like driving on ice. It's so slippery.
Yeah, I love that the driving is like you kind of just like run into a wall because you've got no choice.
Exactly. I've been watching like TikToks of people like doing like real life simulations of what like video game characters look like when they run around towns.
Oh, it's so funny.
You know, like running into like invisible walls and then like moving sideways as a result.
My favorite thing about that is when they they're standing still animation too. When they're like pretending to be a video camera and they're just like really bouncing it down really hard. I'm just like, wow, it's weird that literally no one does that.
Old school Mac OS was badass.
It really was.
I would use this today.
It was, man. Big Sur should have looked like this.
Except I don't think they had 1.04 gigabytes in an image file.
Wait, what?
I'm just looking at this background window here. 1.04 gigabytes available.
Oh, no, probably not.
Oh, cool! This is like cool little like noise death scene.
That's what happens when you die. That's super funny. I'm. That's surprising actually. I wonder if Mac OS could handle a gigabyte or if that's just an emulator quirk.
So we've kind of got ourselves thinking about mechanics again. But I don't know if we have a strategy for implementation. There's we kind of have net play down or multiplayer down to the degree that like we at least know vaguely how we want to do it and it works. The graphical style is kind of getting there. But what do we work on next? You know, like what's...
Yeah, it's a good question. I think,
Gosh, I love these walls.
they look really cool.
These cyber walls.
Yeah. making it more cyber is, of course, a necessary thing.
Yes.
I was thinking it'd be cool to maybe sort of take this down to something more arena sized.
Okay.
Like to just make something where it's like 16 by 16, but like all about testing out the like player to player interactions.
Yeah, so we want to get to maybe we're talking about vertical slice, right? We wanted to do vertical slice by the end of the year. That's a lot of stuff, right?
It's a lot of stuff, but I think sort of building in a way that lets us aim for that will probably go well.
Yeah. So I think the large question to me is that like I feel like there are still some basic questions about presentation that we need to answer. I think, what does the terrain look like?
Oh yeah, that's a great point.
Because we can turn the terrain off. I've kind of
pretty-
gotten used to the terrain looking like this right now, but like we can definitely turn it off and then see what it's like. But then it kind of feels empty, and we need some way of representing variation in the terrain.
Yeah.
So there's that. I was going to say particles, but then I don't actually think particles are 100% necessary. Like not for the final game they are, and I think they contribute a lot to game feel. To the degree that almost when we do weapon tuning, like it's gonna like we're not gonna be able to tune it completely unless we can have particles. But it's not like critical. It's not blocking us from doing.
No, but it
gameplay
had
stuff.
it had a big impact on how things felt, even when we added the first set of those. So I feel ya.
So having some kind of rudimentary particle simulation at least, and figuring out especially how that works with respect to net play is actually something that we never figured out, right?
Yeah, and we had ideas to like do a simple version of that, didn't we? Maybe not. I remember NetPlay had too many particle emitters at one point, so we just
that
cut
was
them
the
all
problem.
out.
Is that
Yeah.
we were duplicating events, and we need a way to deduplicate events, or essentially determining causality. Like if a particle emitter was caused by a certain thing that's getting replayed, you shouldn't regenerate the particle emitter, right?
Yeah,
A bit of a tricky problem.
just a bit.
Yeah. And then those are the visual questions. I think we had talked in the past about doing like height traversal and
I'd be curious if at least the StarCraft like 2-tier model. I think it's simple and repeatable if we wanted to try that out.
and in StarCraft, could you shoot between tiers?
Yes, if you had vision and you had vision, you always had vision top tier to bottom tier, and from bottom tier to top tier, you didn't have vision except for some like specific conditions.
Yeah, and then I think StarCraft has no ambiguity about you can't be under things or over things, right?
I mean, there's the air vehicles, but we don't have to worry about those.
I kind of want to have aircraft in this, but
Maybe we do. That's a good point.
well, I don't know. With aircraft, it's challenging because you have to like, if I'm targeting something here, am I targeting the aircraft that's under the cursor, or am I targeting the thing on the ground that's under the cursor? So maybe aircraft is a bad idea.
Yeah, because in StarCraft, the units were auto aiming at that versus 2 tiers, really, the cursor will always be on the ground. The cursor will always be on the ground. Sort of like you'll just be aiming at the higher ground if you can see it.
I think we could deal with the multiple layers of shooting, but like you think it would be a good idea to experiment with multiple levels, right?
Yeah, I think that'd be really fun.
Okay. And that seems pretty basic to a lot of all other things in design. So if we wanted to do that, I think we need to do that earlier rather than later, right?
Yep, I like that. That sounds like a pretty comprehensive terrain pass, but I like that.
Okay, so is terrain the next horizon for us then?
Yeah,
Even though we spent all this time talking about gameplay, or do we want to take a turn back into gameplay?
you got me all fired up for the some different weapon types and like different ways to interact with the game. So I would be really stoked to pick up like let's make the big shell and the normal shell on Thursday and see what that looks like.
And do we want to get back into the builder as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think let's do that. I think maybe if we take it down to a smaller like map too. I think it'll be really obvious sort of how things interact. We can do more net play instead of more like turret interactions.
Yeah. What I'm kind of drilling towards is that, boy, without killing the fun, I think it would be interesting to see if we can be a more goal-oriented about the way that we approach things, which I think means almost like kind of creating our hierarchy of needs. Like, what are the more important things to build right now? What do we consider to be like stretchy stuff?
I don't think that's going to kill the fun. Because if there's a thing we don't want to build, we can design the game or not around it.
Yeah, and we can always rejigger the plan, but I think it helps to have a plan.
Okay, let's put some thought on that this week then. I think sort of like we kind of have like basic versions of a lot of our systems right now. Like we did a vertical slice of the builder in effect. I think maybe doing that again for a couple of these. Like we do terrain at 2 levels. We do a couple weapons and a couple like motion things.
Yeah. Can I also lay down a challenge for the next 2 weeks for both of us?
Yeah.
Let's each try to make a tank.
In Blender?
In Blender, yeah.
Okay.
And yours is going to be better than mine, but I think we should we still need to like develop enough facility that we can like make a tank.
That's
the homework.
Don't sell yourself short, because I've done exactly as many donuts in Blender as you have.
I had a hard time with that Blender tutorial getting towards the end. Like he crams in a lot of content, right?
Oh, I didn't finish it, so I think we're in the same spot.
I didn't get to the particles even. I only went through his whole basic tutorial is actually 4 different things, 4 different series.
Then I did get further than you, but it's pretty weird.
But yeah, and I was getting like weird behavior in my Blender. Like I was getting flickering in the background. I don't know if it was an M1 thing. It was like seizure inducing. It was like weird.
This might be a good one to do on the PC.
Could be a good one. Oh yes, the tutorial on the PC. But I also think that like the kind of modeling we will be doing in Blender is like so rudimentary compared to like what's out there that hopefully we're not taxing the hardware that much.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's like we're actually going to be modifying vertices at a pretty low level. Like I want that low poly aesthetic. So
low poly aesthetic, and I think the skills we'll need to develop besides being good artists is like, how do you get pixel perfect or like floating point perfect symmetry around things? Like, what are the kind of snapping techniques you can use? What are the mirroring techniques you can use? What are the bag of tricks that you can employ to kind of get that sort of thing?
As I recall, Blender has some very cool mirroring stuff where you can like grab a point over here and do like reflected transforms. Well, it's like you start from a cube and then you like drag one of the points down, but it mirrors it too. So
yeah, and I think you were already demonstrating a technique which is like using typed in parameters as much as possible rather than just like arbitrarily clicking and dragging things.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We're gonna sculpt some shit. I think that is an excellent challenge for both of us.
Okay, so 2 tanks coming in.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to be like our pocket circuit racers. You can have a couple of varieties of those in the game.
Yeah.
And they don't do anything different.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll come up with 2 passable tanks, but if not, we'll have 2 enemy models that we can that can be cannon fodder for the actual game.
Yeah. Ah, sweet. This is a good way to get back into it because I'm excited to build all these things now.
Yes, yeah. I'm sure to procrastinate on actually designing a tank in Blender. I'm gonna like rewrite the game in Rust.
I was gonna say you're gonna build another stack allocator instead of open up Blender, but that's also really cool.
I did do the ray tracer actually because I kind of ran out of things to do in the last couple of weeks on Manchester because I got to the stack allocator. I kind of hit a wall with that. I'm like, you know what, this isn't going anywhere. Like if we need it, we need it. If we don't, we don't. But then I was like, oh, I'll just write the ray tracer, and there's that tutorial out there which is fantastic.
I started reading that. It's really good. Yeah. And
it's actually shocking to me how simple a ray tracer actually is in principle.
Pretty cool, right?
Like you have the the glass material is a little bit hard to deal with, but basically all you do is like you fire a ray from the camera, and you hit something. You're like, what color is it? And then you basically just tweak that a little bit and say like, well, I don't know what color it is because that ray is going to bounce, and so you bounce it, and then you say, okay, well, what color is the thing that I hit next? And basically the way that ray bounces is what your material is. If it's metal, then you have a very predictable bounce. Angle of incidence equals angle of reflection kind of stuff. If it's a diffuse material, then it bounces in a random direction.
And I was gonna say, is diffuse like you're actually bouncing? You shoot multiple rays on the same pixel and like bounce it a couple times.
You are super sampling the pixels anyways.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, like if your camera is here, it's my fist. It's disappearing, and then your sort of plane of projection is here. But then your objects are like way out to the side. Every pixel on the plane of projection is actually a fairly large area of world space. And so what you do is you shoot hundreds of randomly positioned rays in that one pixel. And that's how you get anti-aliasing and ray tracing.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. That is a lot of work then. That makes sense.
Because if you think about it, one pixel could be like at the edge of an object.
Yep.
And if you position it towards the one side of the pixel, you hit the object. If you position it toward the other side of the pixel, you hit air. And what you want is a bunch of samples to average out the color there, and therefore you get kind of like a blended color pixel there.
That's so cool. Man, dude.
And then when rays hit glass, they don't reflect, they refract. So they actually change direction and keep going. So it's all like, I can literally just like verbally describe the principle of it to you. And I definitely couldn't do it sitting down, but with that guidance of that web page, it's just like, it's very, very clear and very plain language what's going on. Besides some of the, like the physics optics stuff, but like who the hell understands that stuff anyways? You just kind of like get the general idea of it and then code it and, just like copy the formulas down.
It's really interesting to me that this seems to be like, this is like the next generation of specialized hardware, right? Like now we're putting, like they're just ray tracing compute units on stuff now because like people want to shoot more rays.
And how it relates to everything that we've learned about 3D graphics in the last 3 months, I have no idea. It doesn't seem like it belongs in a vertex shader or a fragment shader.
Yeah,
I think it's just compute, right? I think they just use compute shaders for it.
Oh, interesting. We're gonna have to like do a project where we have geometry and compute shaders so I can actually get my head around that stuff.
Okay, yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think we can do it in WebGL.
Nope, not
There's
here.
a technology called WebGPU that's coming out, which is like the Vulkan equivalent of WebGL. And you can turn it on in Safari at least.
Hey man, Safari is usually on the cutting edge of the spec, but then keeps it in development mode for like 2 years too long.
Yeah, I actually learned the hard way that I think by default Safari does not have WebGL 2.
That's correct.
Implemented. Yes. Yeah. You were doing it somehow, and then I was like, there's got to be a way, and there's a menu.
Oh, I have it turned on in experimental features for sure.
There is a menu of 50 bazillion things, right?
Yeah.
Look at all these experimental features. Wait, how do I keep that window open? Here we go.
It's challenging. Yeah, how fucking cool is that though?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, WebGPU right there.
Yep. Yeah, I wonder, oh my god, there's some real stuff in here. There's a MathML. Wait, what is that? MathML core. Oh, this is probably for like crypto. Jeez.
I think MathML is it's like LaTeX, right?
Oh.
Yeah, it's the mathematical
ML,
markup language.
Boy, I feel like we've got like between markup language and machine learning and we really sort of abused that acronym.
Yeah.
Oh shit, there's HTTP 3. Okay, there's a lot of these features I'll just never...
Oh, it has HTTP 3.
Mm-hmm.
I say that like everything. As if I kind of understand what that is when I don't really. I think it's somehow like they're going like UDP.
I think it's supposed to make the SSL handshake be a lot easier, faster. Hopefully you waste less time doing it.
And I think HTTP 2 they're trying to get rid of a head of line. No, wait. I think HTTP 3 is they're trying to get rid of head of line blocking, right? The idea that like HTTP 2 is like I'm gonna like pipeline a bunch of requests over the same TCP connection. But the problem is that TCP is ordered, and if you're like requesting like an early packet ahead of a later packet, and it's like a huge file, you're still going to be waiting for that. So I think HTTP 3 says, screw it, we're going to do everything in UDP and just like spray all the packets across the internet, and what comes, and what doesn't come, doesn't come.
That'd be pretty good for us. We do need some UDP, so.
Yeah. Gosh. Too much technology, not enough
know.
time.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty weird.
10 years before the climate apocalypse, we got to make a game. Everyone's got to make a video game.
Is it really only 10 years? Fuck, man.
I don't know. I think it's significantly longer than that, but I think
Significantly longer, and yet
and
it's
coming up.
it's snowing in Texas. New Orleans is going to be under a boil water advisory because the power is going to go off.
Tell me about New Orleans. I didn't hear about this.
I mean, the entire South right now, they're probably going to lose power from the cold snap, which is like hitting the 20s down there, which is too cold for the South. So like pipes will burst, and I think they're turning off power preventatively to like make sure that their power lines don't get ice on them and fall off and kill people.
Mm.
So I think they're gonna turn the system off, but then the water needs to be boiled because it's gonna sit in the pipes and not be pumped. There's like an entire like unfortunate set of causality that's going to make that a very unpleasant experience.
So what do you boil the water with if it's not with electricity?
Oh, gas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, all right. It's just burn some gas.
Yeah. Gas still works.
Okay.
Right. But yeah. Well, I think it's also once the water goes off once, or once the power goes off once, you have to boil water for a week, even when they turn it back on, because of like the system no longer purifying it correctly. This happens a lot when a hurricane comes through. Sometimes you got to boil water for a week.
I heard today that like Texas has its own power grid, right? There's like
Texas.
3 power grids in the United States. There's like one for the Eastern Seaboard. There's one for the rest of the America, except for Texas. And they just wanted their own. They're just like, fuck you, I want my own in case we secede.
Well, I mean, maybe you heard about the state because their power grid went down. That seems bad.
Yeah. But so then Louisiana's is also going to go down. So I was just wondering if they're attached to the Texas power grid in some way.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I only heard about New Orleans losing power and it just being.
Look, Dom, we can zoom in on the game.
It's so cool.
Look at these trees.
The trees are pretty ugly, but
We need better bullets, but
We need better everything.
we need better everything.
Yeah,
I don't know. The trees look kind of cool, right?
the trees are pretty cool.
A little bit too high poly still, but you know. Boy, the frame rate with this zoomed in like this kind of sucks.
Yeah, why did it get worse?
I don't know. Is it because I clicked away? What's going on? I don't really know. It'd be interesting to the profile.
Yep.
Firefox. Strange things happen in Firefox. All right.
Well, happy Monday. Happy day off. I'll see you back here on Thursday.
All right, and welcome back to the stream.
Welcome back to the stream yourself. See you, Twitch.